Okay, as of today, we have a new revised spatter. I'm calling it spatter sponge technique. And this happened in class this morning. This is Saturday. This happened in class this morning, and it was just so obviously immediately successful that I switched out. Now, I have to mention first of all that I made the mistake of thinking, oh, all sponges are alike as long as the holes are the right size. Not true, of course. This is a cellulose sponge that I had a class, unfortunately, a class using. And it's very hard to work with, even though we had it fine tuned and trimmed just right and everything. It turns out it just sucks up all your paint and doesn't like to turn back loose of it too. It just doesn't do the job. So and people struggled and struggled with it, and well, that's what happened. Okay, so I have. I guess this is a sea. I guess this is a real sea sponge. I had some other sponges from Home Depot that were not. They were synthetic of some kind, but they worked really, really well. Uh, and in fact, this may be one of those. I can't tell anymore, quite frankly. Anyway, it was successful, but these little cellulose sponges are just the pits for this. So here's the thing that happened. I was sponging and explaining that, sponging, that's nice and it really helps break things up. But then if you were in the mood to splatter, to go ahead and splatter. This is how this came about. And so I splattered some. And by the way, this is a little Kolinsky Sable, real Kolinsky Sable brush. And it spatters really well, even though it's small. And I think that that's because it's such a thirsty brush. Uh, I'm guessing here, but that's my take on it. So here we have spatters. Now we're going to take our sponge. Let's see, is this on camera? No. Okay. We're going to take our sponge, and what we're going to do is we're not going to squeeze it out at all. This is dry paper so far here. We're just going to shake it. That's all the extra water you want to get off of it. Okay. Hold it down a second. Don't expect it to do miracles very fast. Okay. And I'm touching it down several times. That makes wonderful stuff. Now, it's not all the same value, which was my original plan for this, but it is so good. It really has the look. Now, if you want a little more color in it, you can simply drop a little bit more color into the watery areas, of course, and they will, it will do its thing. So you can do things like that with it. And then, of course, you can still come in and connect more areas if you want to, just like we were doing before. So that is a second layer on what we're doing. It just looks so natural and unpredictable. I mean, it just does the thing. There's none of that contrived left brain look to it at all. It's just really great. Okay, so for now we are back to I believe I named it. I never can remember what I named these things. I need to write this down. I believe I named this Olive Trees on Cliff. Okay, so this is Olive Trees on Cliff. This is part one, has been finished. Now we're going to do part two. We're not to the cliff yet. And so this is going to be a short video, I guess, relatively short. So I'm going to spatter on it. And if you can do this, if you've got a really thirsty little brush that you can make big spatters with, that's really great because you can kind of keep that in place really well. But remember, if you have to sling hard to spatter, you get a different kind of pattern that you may not want. And the thing is to just keep picking up paint. The brush should be really loaded. So let's just do this area to start off with. Okay. I'm spattering a little bit more towards the bottom part of the picture because there's probably more light above. Okay, so here's our sponge, and remember, let's see, do I have this on camera? Remember, you're just going to pick that sponge up and shake it. That's it. Don't squeeze. I really keep being tempted to squeeze, but I know that doesn't work. And then you have to get a grip on it, and maybe you've got a bigger sponge than I do, but I sliced this really thin so that I could distribute a bunch of them for classes. So I actually have plenty for my classes, although I take them back up at the end. That does it really well. I think it could be a little darker. So I am going to add a little more color and just touch it into the wet places. And then I'll see how much I want to distribute this and how much I might want to just leave alone. Ooh, that looks so good. And you know, if you've got a few little spatters that didn't get sponge on them, maybe leave them. So let's spatter some, oh, that spattered into the water. Yeah, I definitely want, see, that's perfect because I want that little bit of thing, branch, whatever, foliage, hanging out over this edge. So you pick whatever size brush you need to get spatters about this size. And I am not raking this off like that. I'm just pulling it up in the brush and that's it. From there you go, you head on over. Oops. Okay. Well, let's see what this does. And here's the thing too, as some people point out to me, it looks better if I want to keep these areas in here pretty light. I want those negative pieces of sky showing through between the branches, but that doesn't mean that you can't have a little sense of foliage in there. And so you could have several spatters, okay, about maybe that much. So let's see what this does. I've got another one here. I think this one's easier to hold on to. So I'm not squeezing it out. I'm just, and you notice I changed the position of it too. Oh, that's perfect. I want to leave that alone just like that. You know, there might be a time when you want to clean this off, or you can also, you know, just stamp with it with what's left from these drips. You might occasionally want to spread a little more of it. Yeah, that's a little bit weak. And I don't like these two spots right here. I think I'm going to take that one out. Oops. So we're calling this splatter sponging, I guess. Okay. Picking up more color here, because some of these areas are too pale. They might look almost right now, but they're wet. And when they dry, they'll be too weak, and you won't get that. It might look a little more natural, but you won't get that pop that we're looking for. You know, I could connect some areas, or I wanted a lot of open areas in this, but. So remember, this is your happy little tree. So you can dress it up any way you want. Now I've decided this could be a little darker, a little stronger in here. See how my trunks are now starting to look weak? Because this color is getting stronger. Everything's relative to everything else, just like life. So, see, I don't have anything down in here. I'm going to just touch some spots in here. And then I'm going to hit it with the sponge. Maybe I'll squeeze that just a tiny bit. Oh, that's good. Yeah, let's do it like that. I think some of this could get a little darker too. You know, practice this on a scrap. Play with it. I think this is, you know, I'm not a landscape person. And you can certainly paint these shapes in. In fact, I watched somebody on YouTube paint one in. This has gotten too wet. I should leave that alone for now. If anything I put in there is liable to turn into a big blob. Same thing here. That needs a little connection right there. Let's lighten it a little bit. Whoop. Too much again. That ought to do it. Okay. So I'm going to leave that for now. I think. So here's the thing. Again, and I don't know how many times I preached this, but you know, when you're in class, it's a little bit hard to really paint, because when you're really painting, which I'm not right now, I'm demonstrating, and there's a difference. When you're really painting, your brain is kind of letting you noodle around with stuff, and just sort of explore it and tweak it, and you know, just play with it. And that's what I really want people to do with their work. Okay, so then we could come down here. Those trunks are going to need to deepen, but not right now because the foliage is wet. But let's see, what do I have right here? No, that's a green. Well, that might work. I want kind of a blue-green. Maybe I'll put just a tiny bit of indigo into this. Okay, so what I want to do is put kind of shadows from the trees in here on this grass. And I don't know. I'm just looking for a nice playful shape. Let's face it, the tree right there would probably cast a lot bigger shadow than what I'm putting down here. Maybe I can make part of this shadow go all the way to the edge of the foliage. But I want some kind of playful design in here. And maybe that, because it's a shadow, maybe it could be a little more solid. I'm adding water here. And filling in some of those openings. Let's just get that paint a little thinner. So maybe here. And then this little one was supposed to be a lot thinner foliage, but I got kind of a blob there. You know, maybe I'll try to weaken that blob. I don't like it. uh, you know, sometimes you're doing something and you don't totally like what you did at the moment, but when it all comes together, turns out that it was okay or even pretty good. Okay, so we need a little bit of shadow out in here too. Maybe just something like that. And then there could be a little bit of shadow stuff right here at the edges. In the original picture, there's some kind of brown stems coming up under a lot of stuff. But I just didn't want to do it. I like it in the original picture, but when I tried it, I just didn't like the look that I got. Maybe if I'd kept working, I could have worked something out, but I didn't. So there, okay. So we've got a second layer here. We're going to have to darken the trunks and put a third darker layer up here, and I'll probably leave these grasses like they are. Well, this is dried, and when it did, I can see that that's a little bit too light compared to this. The shadow doesn't have to be totally the same value throughout, by any means. They aren't. But, let's see. Now, here's the problem. I'm putting color on top of color. I'm trying to kind of stay in the same places so that it doesn't look extra textured. I love texture, but it's great in the right amounts. I think that that'll be about right. I don't mind if this gets a little bit lighter over here. This tree's supposed to be sparser, although it's not quite working like that. Okay. And here my shadow just faded out, and I like that. You know, I love a lost edge or two. In fact, wouldn't it be nice if there was a little bit more of a lost edge somewhere else? Well, here's Mr. Clean again. I used to laugh at those Mr. Clean ads when I was a young woman. They were so ridiculous. Oh, Mr. Clean. And now, I love him. Okay. Now, let's do something about this up here, and it needs to be dramatic. This really looks, you know, more naturalized with that, with the latest, the splatter and sponge. And now we need something considerably darker, I think. And because I want this part of the painting to stand out, and I want the trunks to get quite a bit darker. So I can't get the trunks a lot darker without doing something with the foliage too. So I've got this from last night, this olive, but that's what I used here. That's not going to cut it at all. So what could we do here? Well, of course, I can resort to some more indigo. And let's just drop in a little bit of phthalo green. That'll darken it without it being quite so yellow colored. And this is phthalo green blue shade, which as far as I'm concerned is the only phthalo green that matters. I don't order any of the other stuff. Oh, that's still not going to make me happy. Uh, I've been using some of the permanent brown in this. I think I'll use some burnt umber this time. Oops. This can be part of my yellow because burnt umber is a yellow. But it can also darken this. I didn't pre-wet my paint, so I'm having trouble getting strong enough color up. So I think, yeah, I've been holding that off camera. Okay. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go do something else and let this evaporate a little bit. I should have pre-wet these colors. Because when you want strong color, you know, we save a lot of wasted color by drying, by having our paint dry in the palette. Oh, let's see what that looks like. But that also makes it hard to get up a lot of color when you want it, which means that you really need to pre-wet it and then put the lid back on. See what this looks like. And the other thing is you need a test sheet. Well, that is really dull. I think it will work okay, but it's got to be more concentrated than this. You see how this is actually is not, it's a dark color. Of course, it looks darker on your screen than it does actually in real life. But this is too thin. It's a good dark mixture in terms of color, but in terms of the amount of water in it, there's too much water in it to get something as dark as what I want. And when we put on, this is my gripe, I keep reminding people about this, when we put on color that is meant to be a shadow color, it's meant to be dark, but it's on too thin because we've wet it down too much, then what you get is not only do you not get much effect because it's too weak, actually you get a terrible effect because this is a dull color. And so you've got this weak film of dullness spread out. And that's terrible. Better to do nothing at all than to do that. So rather than mix up more, I've got other things to do, so I'll go do those. And when I come back, it'll be just right. If not, I'll put some stronger color in it. Well, let's see if this mixture is better. I got tired of waiting on it, so I put in a lot of phthalo green, which was thick, and some burnt umber, which was thick. So let's look at the color. Okay, that is a better color anyway. It's greener, and I think it's going to be strong enough. We'll try it on the painting. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to spatter, and I didn't add water with my brush. Now this brush was squeezed out. So let's just pick a spot here and see what the mixture is going to do. Okay. So I think this time I may give the sponge a tiny, I may give the sponge a tiny squeeze. Shake it out, a tiny squeeze. I want a lot of water on it, but I don't want to thin this out too much. I think maybe last time I had a little too much water on the sponge. I also really don't know what this is going to do when I have two buildups of this technique, because I don't want it to go too busy. I like that. See, the thing is not to keep working the sponge. And And that doesn't mean we might not aim some in certain places. Oh, I didn't mean to do that. Okay, see, just scoop that paint up and don't even rake the brush off. Well, maybe there, that little bit. And here I may go ahead. I see I like the different sizes of sprinkles also. Let's get quite a bit of dark down here. The sponge and the splatter, I keep saying this, but the sponge and the splatter are simply a way to get around that left brain's desire to make everything regular, which frequently doesn't look natural. So there's quite a bit less water on this sponge, but it's still totally soggy in my hand. I think I'll leave that one little drip right there. I think I'll leave those solid. Oh, yeah, I don't want too much water. This is too much water. I did a little too much water last time on this. Too much water just spreads it and thins it out and takes it back to being kind of normal. Here I'm just sponging. Okay, that's kind of nice. I don't think that we need a whole lot of this. Again, if your brush is really loaded, you don't have to sling it hard. The harder you have to sling your brush, the finer the spray will be. Yeah, I mean, you'll get little tiny droplets. I learned that from watching crime detection shows. Blood spatter. Same thing. Let's maybe come up in here, add a few drops. I'd like something real fine right out here, just barely there. So I'm raking off my brush. Let's see if I can just, whoop. Well, that wasn't quite what I meant, but we'll live with it. Because it never does quite what you mean, and that's a good thing because your left brain is just so screwed up when it comes to art. You know, I don't actually mean your left brain. And actually, you couldn't paint without it. So, oh, that's a nice shape there. Those are really nice. I think I'll leave that light back there. A little bit of dark up in there. Okay. So if I've got a shape that I like, because now I can see the shapes, because it's not just water. If I want to deepen some of them, I can just add a little paint into them. I think that's about right there. Oh, these down here. That's a little too dark. I'm just gonna give it a little blot. Oh, it's still pretty dark, but I don't know. Let's drop in a little more color right there. We'll leave that. How about, just little dots every now and then is a good thing. Okay, and I've got a lot of lights in through there. I like this spot down here. It's probably not logical for what the light should be doing there, but I don't care because I like it. If this was about reality, I'd just show a photograph. So, let's see. Just barely softened those, and they really didn't bleed out any. Yeah, we'll leave that like that. Okay. So I'll leave that and come back to it and do the trunks. Well, it's dried. It looks pretty good on camera. In real life, it's just a little bit, it's just not quite strong enough in here. And that's one of the things, is that algorithm in that camera punches things up a little bit. And, you know, that could be used as a way to, when you look at your painting, if it looks better photographed than it does in real life, then you know, you can look at it and see where the difference is and where you could add more contrast. I think that could be a real helpful, useful thing. So I've just got a little more burnt umber here. I'm going to mix it with some of this greenish-ish stuff. So it's more of a raw umber kind of look. I'm not saying it's the same thing as raw umber. I'm just saying it's more neutralized. Okay, so what we're going to do is put it on strong and not everywhere, of course. So these trunks have to deepen up. Oh, that's not dark enough. If it looks right now, it's not dark enough. Okay, I'm going to pick up a little bit of indigo and stick in here. Maybe I just need stronger paint. I think more than the color, it's about something being a little more concentrated. I'll pick up some of my phthalo green here because, oops, I didn't get enough. I'll pick up some of my phthalo green just because my phthalo green is kind of fresh on top, and so it's pretty thick. Okay, well that's almost black. Let's get a little more burnt umber in it. I bet that'll work. Let's see what that looks like. Okay, that's better. So the thing is, you just gotta put it some places. If you put it everywhere, well, you know. Let's okay, let's add a little water now. Just a very little bit, because I don't want to thin it out too much. But I want to soften some edges. Again, don't soften all of them. Leave some crisp spots too. I think that has to soften there. And then down here, let's soften this a little bit. There, maybe something like that. You could go darker all over if you wanted to. And I will remind you again, it is your happy little tree. Okay. So maybe there, and this is on record, right? Yeah, okay. Oh, I didn't squeeze my brush out. I'm going to squeeze my brush out before I dip it in my mix, because my mix is about right now. Get that limb way darker than the green. Yeah. Well, that's a lost edge for sure. Okay. Add a little water. I think, see that spot right there? I think I'm going to add water there. Yeah. Okay. Let's add a little water in some of these places. And as usual, you know, sometimes you have to go back and look at what's happened after the water has had a chance to move around some more. I didn't leave very many hard edges on that. Okay. Oh, yeah, that's so much better. Now I've got my little new brush. This is that Princeton Aqua Elite, and it's got that point on it. Now, I had some good, I couldn't resist buying this. I really liked it. But I had some, I have some rat whisker brushes that are really great too. So I'm going to pick up some of my darks here, and let's just put in a few other limbs. Now, this is great for like the little twiggy things, you know, which would be good, or flying birds or something, you know. But you also need some intermediate size limbs. That needs to be thicker there. You also need some intermediate size limbs that maybe you can just see a little piece of it here and there. So you know, right when we do something, it never looks good enough to us, or most of us. I go through that. And I go through that when I do these videos too, which makes the videos less fun. Trust me. Oh, let's definitely have a twig out over here. This is fun to play with. And the thing is, sometimes when something's fun, it's easy to get carried away and do too much of it. And maybe you don't need a whole lot of it. I think that's not brown enough to read as a limb. I'm gonna, one that's that thick, I'm gonna add some burnt umber on top of it and maybe get a little bit strong with it. Again, we'll have to see how that looks dry. See, I don't know if I'm gonna like that. I'll come back and weaken it if I don't, but it really needs to dry. So, okay, well, my brush isn't loaded up enough. And this little brush is meant to be loaded up all the way to the ferrule. You can load it up, and so that acts as a reservoir, so you can paint a long time with it. It's great for small areas. I don't find it useful for anything but small areas. You know, this just doesn't look right. I'm there. That looks a little more like a limb. Till then, it was like a piece of 2x4 stuck up there. Okay. So for now, I'm going to call this it. You know, we've still got to work this part down here, and there's a strong probability that we will come back and do some little things up here. I just don't like that spot. I'm thinking I'm going to blot it back and think about it. Well, I may have to think a lot more than that, huh? Okay. This is it for now. Okay. Actually, yeah, on camera it looks pretty good. Sometimes it looks worse on camera. Bye.